Hey, friends, happy Friday to you. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to come and start a new section where I'm going to talk for the next 6 days on a series of callings that are available to all of us. And to some degree, we all go through them or interact with them in our life, but some of them stack on top of each other. And today, the one I want to talk about is this first one that we all just immediately have the minute we're here and the minute we're born. I have a mentor, Dave Kraft, who says that there are sort of four callings: the call to salvation, the call to discipleship, the call to service, and the call to leadership. And those are all part of the four calls that I want to take. But I think that there's two others. And the first one is one that even if we don't receive the call to salvation, right, we have this call. We all are going to have to interact with this call. And that is the call to create. You see, we were created in God's image and we were born. And the minute we're born, we have to create our life. Whatever we do with our life creates our life. It creates a culture in our family, in our life, in our workplace, and in what we do. And we all have it. There's literally no option that you're not going to interact in that in some way. Even if you decide to bail out, that is something that you create. That is some way in which you be. And so I think that there's just a few things I'd like to share with you about that call, because I think most of us, we can say, well, what is life? Is it a struggle? Is it a schoolhouse? Is it a battle? You know, there's a lot of different ways that people think about that. But in one sense, it's fabulously sacred. Um, I mean, if you understand that you are a unique person, that not a single person that's lived before or lived after is going to be like you, is going to have your opportunities, your particular skills, your particular way of being, your particular opportunities, your particular relationships, live in this specific time and this specific people. Um, I mean, when you really think about that, just forget about accomplishment and what we want and comfort and all the things we spend all of our time focusing on for a second. It's really pretty freaking extraordinary. It's beautiful. I love this line. I'm a big fan of Rich Mullins, and he has this song where he says this line. He says, "We are frail, we are fearfully and wonderfully made, formed in the fires of human passion, choking on the fumes of selfish rage. And with these, our hells and our heavens, so few inches apart, we must be awfully small and not as strong as we think we are." And I love that. It's just beautiful poetry. But it also captures something like when we are created. I mean, think about it. Let's just talk about the beautiful creation of God in us for a second. Most of us, I mean, some of us are born with some kind of handicap, right? But all of us have whatever we have, whatever we come to, right? We may be born into a family, but we weren't aborted or not born, right? We may have some difficulties in that family, but we also have opportunities to move and create family beyond that. I know some people who have had, difficult upbringings and they've decided not to bring family in because they don't want to repeat that. But I know other people who have said, I'm going to basically show how you could have good family, even though it wasn't shown to me, which I think is extraordinary. They chose to create that. That's what they are choosing to create and bring to the world. And we have whatever gifts we have, right? I'm not going to get to be 6 feet tall, but I'm not 4 feet tall, and I'm maybe not the smartest person in the world, but I have a pretty good mind, and I can create, and I can do things, and I can love people, and I can bring things to people, and I can care about people, and all of that is the beautiful sacredness of us. And part of what we must do if we're going to create our own world is to survey who we are, the things we care about, the things that inspire us, the skills that we have, the way we feel like God is speaking to us in the world, even if we don't put the name God in it, how he speaks to us, and therefore what we're going to do with that. Because guess what? That too is a gift, right? Like, here is part of what the call to create means. Besides having all of the grace that is the gift of who we are, one of those graces is we get to choose what we're going to do with it every single day, regardless of whatever difficulties we have. We can choose not only what we're going to do with it, we can choose how to look at it, right? Are we going to see this as drudgery, a problem to overcome, or are we going to see this as, this glorious, beautiful opportunity to participate in the world and love the world and experience the world holistically? We get to choose that. You get to choose your perspective. All right, there's a bunch of people that would probably say I'm, being a pansy talking about it, but I get to choose. I get to choose the way I see the beauty of the world, the beauty of other people, the beauty of what I see God doing in the world, and so do you. And then you get to choose what you're going to do with it, right? It's said that, we can't necessarily control what's done to us, although we spend a lot of time trying to do that. But we can choose what we do with it. And that really makes all the difference, right? Us choosing what we're going to create, how we're going to interact with the callings that we get as we go through life, whether those be people that come in our life or whatever, right? We get to choose what we're going to do with those things. And that's where we have a tremendous amount of power in our calling. Now, similarly, I can choose whether or not I'm going to see God walking in that with me. And that's where some of the other calls come in, right? He has other calls. I can choose to go further with him and live in those calls and let those calls infuse my life too. Or I can choose to reject those calls and kind of be like this and just say, hey, I think that's all poppycock and I don't want to deal with it. It's your choice. Isn't it amazing that you have a God who has enough grace to give you that choice? But he has so much more that he wants to give you if you accept him and if you walk with him, right? And that's where we get to some of the other calls. But listen, what you've got to understand is that while we have all of these beautiful gifts, we have, some things that are difficult about us. In Rich's song, he says, our hells and our heavens, right? With, formed in the fires of human passion, choking on the fumes of selfish rage. And I think we all know that, we aren't particularly perfect. I think there's several things that we know. Like, for instance, besides being able to know about ourselves, our gifts, our own passions, and think about them independent of anything else. Do you know anybody who's never had a paradigm shift moment? I mean, haven't you had a paradigm shift moment where you thought one thing and then something happens and then in an instant you see it completely and totally different? Where does that come from? Like, it didn't come from inside you, right? Because you already had a way in which you saw it. Something else happens serendipitously somehow, and now you see something completely different, right? Uh, Don't you sometimes grade, like if you ever have to take a test, a way in which you're evaluating your workplace or yourself or whatever, and it's on a scale of 1 to 10, and don't you know that on some days you're grading really harsh, and on other days you're grading really liberally, and it's almost hard to sometimes decide how to be accurate, right? What's behind that? Right? Right? There are things beyond us in the world. How many of you have never had some moment that you have felt completely is miraculous? Some moment where you're dazzled by the splendor that's being given to you and with the appreciation of it. And or you've had some moment where like the number of coincidences just can't be a coincidence, right? This is God always trying to reach into our lives. But we also have a lot inside us that is broken and messed up. And if we're honest, we know that too, right? And we don't have to call that sin, right? How many of you are trying to do something and you just can't get out of your own way? It's not even necessarily something that someone else is keeping you from doing. You're just struggling with it, right? And so we do have this push me, pull you, and it's difficult to navigate that in our lives. But that's what all of that has to be factored in. If I'm going to create my life, I have to factor in my own skills and what I'm doing. I have to factor in my own weaknesses and the weaknesses of other people and the way that other people can affect me. And and I have to factor in this unknown mysteriousness of life that I can't really control or manipulate. Well, to me, that's all the more reason why I would want to take that journey with God, because He is what's behind those things and how to navigate those things. And I love what Mullen says at the end of that. We must be awfully small and not as strong as we think we are. On many days, we're just, we're pulling up our pants, our bootstraps. We're trying to get things done, and we think it's all us. But how much more when we can connect with the fact that there is a God and that He really longs to help us take that journey. And we can just talk to Him. We can just put out our frustrations. We can just put out our concerns. We can have Him help us evaluate our strengths and our directions. We can have Him, help us overcome struggles. We can have Him help us interpret these serendipitous moments and what they mean and where we should go. Maybe God doesn't exist, but if nothing else at all, it's exciting to have someone who you can share all that with and take the journey with, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? I think sometimes people think that, they don't pursue God because they think He's against them. But even with our weaknesses, He's not against us at all. He knows all of those things for us, and He invites us to go take them. So when we create our life, we can go create it on our own, but we can also choose to take some of the other callings and create that life with Him. Either way, you're going to create a life. The choice for you is which life you're going to create, how you be intentional about it, and whether or not you bring all your powers to bear, right? If you bring your community, your family, yourself, right? Mentors and others who can help you, right? And whether or not you bring the God who loves you and who's designed you and who knows exactly what life you're supposed to lead and knows all the things you're going to go through and is there to walk you with you through them, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So that's what I have for you today. That's what I think about when I think about the call to create. We are all created to be like Him. And so we're going to create. And the first thing we're going to create is our own life. And the way in which we do that is by, raising the necessity, being intentional about it, and choosing how we're going to lead that. And He's going to show us all of the other calls we're going to talk about over the next 5 days. He's going to walk us into all 5 of those calls in one way or another in our life. We get to choose what we're going to do with those. So I hope you'll join me on Monday. We're going to pick up and start with the next call that God has for us and why it's significant and why it's more significant than most people realize, because we're mostly not taught about just how significant it is. So I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you for joining in on the Calling Talks. And let me know what you think. Reach out to me if you'd love to chat about it. I would love to chat with you. If I can serve you in some way, I'd love to do that. This is Todd Boyum. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye. Trying to stop things.